All right, welcome back to Swim Experts. And today's topic, we're going to talk about mental health in a broad sense, but more specifically, events are coming back, sports events, some events perhaps by Swimming Canada. And we're going to explore some of the anxieties that perhaps swimmers, fans, administrators, anyone attending an event might experience this. And to help us navigate this topic, high performance mental health advisor for Swimming Canada, Dr. Carla Edwards is with us. Dr. Edwards, thank you for taking some time to join us today.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about this topic. It's a hot topic because we're all readjusting again. So it's nice to have some advanced preparation for what to do.
Absolutely, and in a way it is good news that we are starting to think about gathering for events in person again. We'll start with that because it's probably been over a year since many people have even gathered before restrictions have been put in place. Most of us haven't been to an event in over a year. In your opinion, what are some things that might cause people some anxiety around attending their first in-person event in a really long time?
I think there's benefits and challenges to what we've seen unfolding in the world over the last 6 months, even. Some parts of the world have resumed gatherings well in advance of what we have done. So we have the luxury of having seen how other places have done it, so we can learn some lessons and pitfalls to avoid, certainly. But here in Canada, I mean, we're all readjusting again at different rates depending on the region or the province that you're living in. So we've had some fluctuations in what we've been able to do. But what I like to think of is that we now have a year of experience under all of our belts. So we've learned how to adapt to a certain degree along the way. But now we're finding ourselves in a situation where we need to prepare for, again, gatherings, as you've talked about. So we need to start thinking about how we're going to address that. But again, we have experts who have kind of laid some ground rules and guidelines to be able to guide us along the way. So we're not making it up as we go. We do actually have some expertise and we understand the situation better than we did a year ago. So we do have some plans to follow that can help us feel a little bit more reassured.
Now, talk about a little bit about the, I guess, the A to B thought process of going to an event. We'll start with traveling to an in-person event. I mean, there are some challenges in getting to an event. What would you recommend for people who are experiencing anxiety about traveling?
I think it's a really normal thing to experience. One of the things we've learned in the last year, or even the last 8 months since we've, been back in facilities, some places have been able to train again. What they've had to do is think about every step more than they would have ever had to before. In the past, you would collect your things, go to the pool or the office or the store and just do your thing and leave without really thinking about all of the individual little steps along the way. What we've had to do in the last 8 to 10 months or so is think about all of those little steps along the way and how we need to adapt or do things differently because of circumstances. So as applied to this current situation, getting up and going to the office is not going to be as simple as it used to be. You need to think about what the screening processes are once you get there, what the geographical layout is once you get there, where you're going to eat, how many people are allowed in the bathroom. Again, the minutiae of the details that we would never have had to think about before. Essentially, what we need to do now is plan that in advance and anticipate what all those little steps are and wrap your head around a plan for each one of those before you even go, right? The best preparation will prepare you for anything and will reduce the amount of anxiety that you're going to experience along the way. So it's really about dissecting every step along the way and figuring out your plan about how you're going to manage that well in advance.
What about being just in a large group of people in general? Many of us have been at home or in limited social groups. When events begin again, we're going to be around large groups of people, which is going to be new to us again. What sort of anxiety and feelings do you think people will experience, and what advice do you have for those people?
I think we're going to see a lot of people with varying levels of comfort in a setting like that. And we see it now when we're at stores. Some people are really anxious and really avoidant, while some will still invade your personal space. So we kind of have to anticipate what we're going to encounter. In a large group, you're going to see a mix of lots of different things. but you can only manage your own self. And I think being able to anticipate how you're going to approach that, thinking about the various scenarios. What will I do when I'm around a group of people? I need to follow public health guidelines. I want to make sure I keep my distance, and I want to make sure I'm not touching things and, wearing a mask. Again, it's really about being aware of the rules of the place that you're going. Every province is different. Different offices and locations will have different rules and expectations. So it's really, really important to understand what the rules are at the place that you're going, and then preparing for how you are going to manage your own behavior when you're there. How are you going to keep your distance? How will you react if someone does invade your space? Are you somebody who will just make sure you step back and get your space back, or will you be more vocal about it? Again, it's anticipating those situations, but being aware of the rules and being mindful of how you're going to manage your own safety and personal hygiene in those situations. And I mean, really having a plan for if you do feel anxious, what you're going to do about that. Will you be able to leave? Will you have some coping mechanism to be able to manage, the heat, feeling that you're being crowded by people, finding the exits, finding some space, planning for your own self.
Now, when events start to get into full swing, you're going to have many athletes, or, if this isn't related to sports, just general public going to facilities that they're not familiar with, or maybe perhaps they haven't been to a facility for a very long time, and they might have new protocols. How would you recommend dealing with anxiety or mental health when it comes to approaching new situations that have new protocols when large gatherings and events are allowed again?
I think the internet is an amazing resource. And so going to the website of whatever facility or place you're going to in advance to read about their COVID guidelines or their protocols before you even get there is really important. If you're part of an organization or a team, I would hope there would be some sort of advanced communication about policies and protocols before you get there. Otherwise, it's very reasonable to ask those questions. Ask somebody who's been there or who is going there what the policies are, or make sure you ask somebody when you're there. But again, it's always better to be prepared before you go there. If it's a new place, typically you can, again, go on the web, go on YouTube, and there's probably video or pictures of what the inside looks like. Even places you've been before likely have new protocols relative to the last time you were there, right? So understanding the place you're going, trying to get an idea of what the flow and expectation is going to be when you get there. Again, advanced preparation is the best thing you can do.
I want to look specifically at event structures themselves, sports, again, concerts, whatever it may be. Should athletes, in this particular example, be preparing differently than, say, coaches or officials or volunteers? Or do you think perhaps the expectations of safety and protocol will be different for each? Or what is the process? Let's start with the athlete. Should they be preparing differently from, let's say, an administrator or a judge or, a volunteer? How do you think that plays out, or is it perhaps the same?
I think in some elements it's the same. I think there are general expectations of safety protocols and guidelines that we all have to follow no matter what. Those are the public health policies. I think within an organization, when we look at, let's say, a Swimming Canada, where there are multiple levels of different roles, much like on a team, everybody has a different role to play. So every different role needs to understand what their job is within their role. So an athlete who's going to be coming for trials, for example, it would be very important for that person to understand where they check in, where they get changed, how much time they have, what the expectation is of their competition, which will be very different from the person who is doing screening at the door, for example. So while everybody's role is very important and they have to understand the nuances of their positions really well in order to be safe and help everyone around them be safe, it will be different. There will be some different expectations for the various different roles of people.
And one last question for you. perhaps a little bit, let's broaden this conversation. A lot of people, maybe positively or negatively, will have to return to offices, for example. I know we've all enjoyed working from home. Are there any other ways people can use these strategies? For example, people that are returning to offices, there's probably a lot of anxiety for people. I know certain polling says people are actually, at least in the downtown Toronto core, are looking forward to returning to offices. Do you think these are strategies that they can utilize, or how do you think people, returning to something like a large office, how can they prepare mentally, and what challenges do you think that they will, face returning to, I guess, a normal workspace?
Again, anticipation is a really important skill to have. So if you've been in a situation before, trying to remember what that was like, and then trying to anticipate what the differences will be now going back, because it is a different environment. It will not be the same as it was before. Some places may have plexiglass up, some places will be in different rooms. There will be a different configuration. So again, I think it's really important for people to do as much investigating as they can before returning to a setting like that, to prepare themselves for what is going to be different. The least surprises that you can create for yourself, the better. So the more prepared, the better. Even, again, the little things like, where are you going to have your lunch? It may be different. You may not be able to eat in the same place with the same people that you used to before. So having some idea of what's expected from that point of view is really important. Another thing that has really been talked about a lot is compassion for yourself and for those around you. There's a lot of COVID shaming. There's a lot of bias and discrimination against people that are being blamed for the virus, or maybe judged as being more likely to spread the virus or less trustworthy around their behavior. I think people need to be aware of those biases and try to minimize those as much as possible, because most people are going to be anxious in this situation. A lot of people are going to be readjusting and struggling. So having an awareness of that and appreciation and some compassion is really important for everybody to be able to do this as smoothly as possible.
And I lied to you. This is the last question, actually, specifically for swimmers. What advice do you have for them as it relates to, we talked a lot about preparation. I think one thing that perhaps goes undetected is preparing, your gear, swims, caps, goggles. Is this something that swimmers should be checking for quality? What part of this new mental, checklist should athletes be going through as we return to events and things like that after a pandemic? I know general health, mental and physical, but in this case, cleanliness, I guess is what I'm referring to, is important as we navigate through the COVID-19 pandemic. But when it relates to swimmers, how would you advise them on dealing with their gear, I guess, for lack of a better word?
Again, I think it goes back to attendance to the minutiae, attendance to the details. So things that you would not necessarily have had to think about as much before, just throwing stuff in your bag and going, you need to pay attention to now. So it's ensuring you have checklists. It's okay to have checklists. As we're adjusting in this new environment, we need checklists to make sure we don't forget anything. And for big events like trials, you don't want to go to the arena and not have something in your bag. So making sure you have 2 or 3 of your swim caps, of your goggles, making sure that they're in good quality, that they're not going to break when you get there. Again, minimizing those surprises as much as you possibly can through anticipation and preparation. So checklists are important, checking it twice, making sure you have 2 or 3 of things, making sure you have everything that you're going to need. Be as prepared as you can. Now's the time.
Wise words. Prepare so that you are not caught with any surprises, at least so that you do not incur any mental health, anxiety, any issues like that as we continue to navigate through the COVID-19 pandemic, but with positivity now that we are starting to think about events that will now happen in sports and popular culture. So some good news, at least, to take away from this conversation with Dr. Carla Edwards, who of course is the High Performance Mental Health Advisor for Swimming Canada. Thank you so much for your insights and your time today, Dr. Edwards. I certainly feel a lot better knowing that preparation is key when it comes to approaching these situations. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.